Hey there, guys. This is Cole. Welcome to a top 20 list. Now, um, I was going to review Home Alone today, but I just didn't get time to do it. Just kind of wanted a chill day. And now, no promises guaranteed, but I am going to try my best to at least review the first Home Alone movie before December is over. But if I can't, I'm making this video as a backup plan in case I don't get the chance to do that. But as you can tell by the title of today's video, I'm going to give you my top 20 personal favorite Christmas movies of all time. Now there is a specific movie on here that has been debated for years if it's a Christmas movie or not, and I think we all know what that is, but if you don't consider it one, okay, whatever, fine, it's a weird argument, but not going to get into that, but this is my top 20 favorite Christmas movies, and I got a few honorable mentions here before we get into my top 20, and those honorable mentions are How the Grinch Stole Christmas from the year 2000, starring Jim Carrey, directed by Ron Howard. Very fun Christmas movie, in my opinion, and this actually was the first Christmas movie I ever saw, and yeah, it's a fun movie. I think Jim Carrey is really good as the Grinch, and this movie, it pretty much takes the classic short story of the Grinch and stretches it out to a theatrical film, it stretches it out to a feature-length film, but it adds a lot of elements to the story, which in a way I think makes the book better, but this is a really good movie. You guys want to hear my thoughts? I did a review on it. Next honorable mention is going to be, now, I don't have all these movies on DVD, just to point out, but next honorable mention is going to be the Santa Claus from 1994. Really good Christmas family comedy movie starring Tim Allen, where Santa Claus falls off the roof and Tim Allen has to take over as Santa Claus with his kid, to deliver presents for Christmas. And I think it's a very good, heartfelt father-son story. Next honorable mention is going to be the Polar Express, which Now to be fair, I don't exactly remember if this was the first Christmas movie I saw. Like, I think it's kind of hard to say. It was either this or How the Grinch Stole Christmas with Jim Carrey, but setting that aside, I really do like the Polar Express. I think it's a really feel-good type of animated family Christmas movie. In fact, special shout out goes to the YouTuber Joshua Drake Randall, who has the YouTube channel Epictastic Joshua. This is actually his favorite Christmas movie of all time. Now, it's not quite there for me, but at the same time, I still do love this movie, and I can definitely see why it's his favorite Christmas movie. But yeah, next honorable mention is going to be The Nightmare Before Christmas. I mean, it's an iconic family Christmas movie, and this is the only Christmas movie, well, one of the only few, that you could actually watch in either October or November, and it fits both seasons perfectly. But yeah, really good movie. Next honorable mention is going to be Batman Returns from 1992, directed by Tim Burton, starring Michael Keaton. The only Batman movie that is set on Christmas, but I really like this movie. Michael Keaton is a great Batman. I think that the action set pieces are really good. Michelle Pfeiffer, I think, is by far the best on-screen interpretation of Catwoman we've seen. And Danny DeVito was a really good Penguin. Next honorable mention is going to be Gremlins. Very good creature feature comedy movie set on Christmas. Of course, the Mogwai are iconic creatures, and Gizmo's one of the cutest movie monsters. But yeah, really good family movie. And the last honorable mention is a movie I watched for the very first time this year, and that is Trading Places, starring Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd, where basically the premise of this movie is where you basically have comedic genius Eddie Murphy with Dan Aykroyd, where you get this timeless comedy classic Lance with satirical humor. And basically in this movie, it's a movie where Eddie Murphy basically stars as a small-time con artist who gets the chance to switch lives with Dan Aykroyd's big-time stock market maven. But reversal on fortunes is just a cruel joke perpetrated by two bored, mega rich brothers as a part of an ideal bet. And then the truth comes out, and the consequences are sheer comedy gold. But yeah, love this movie. I watched this for free on Tubi this year, and I loved it so much that I got it on DVD. But yes, I will definitely be watching this every Christmas from now on. I can tell you that. But yeah. Anyways, that was the end of the honorable mentions. Let's get into my top 20. Coming in at number 20 is a bit of a recent one, but number 20 for me is going to be the action movie Violent Night starring David Harbour. Now, Die Hard is my favorite action movie of all time. And favorite Christmas movie, which it is a Christmas movie as far as I'm concerned. Again, I think the whole debate of it not being one is stupid, but I'm not going to get into that. Just enjoy the video for what it is, okay? But anyways, yeah, Violent Night. Essentially, this movie basically pictured the movie Die Hard, but instead of it being a dad trying to get home to his family, it's basically a movie where Santa Claus has to stop a group of robbers from breaking into a family's house he basically has to stop a group of terrorists who break inside a family's house on Christmas, which is a rather interesting concept. I think that David Harbour is really good as Santa. I think that the humor is good. And one thing I will say about this movie, I do like how this movie has a lot of callbacks to I like how this movie has a lot of classic callbacks to older Christmas movies like Die Hard and Home Alone. I thought that the references to those movies were nice and just, yeah. Now, again, it is a bit more recent, so, we have yet for the sequel to come out, which comes out in 2026, so who knows, depending on how the sequel turns out, there's a chance that this movie could go up a few spots higher on the list, but right now, it is sitting right here comfortably at number 20. Coming in at number 19 is actually a movie that I watched for the very first time today, and that is The Family Man, starring Nicolas Cage and Téa Leoni. And what I really like about this movie is how this movie basically takes the idea, and story template of It's a Wonderful Life, this movie basically takes the idea of It's a Wonderful Life, but it adds its own unique spin to it, and it has Nicolas Cage as the main character, where essentially the premise of this movie is where Jack Campbell, the main character played by Nicolas Cage, is a single, wealthy Wall Street trader living in the high life cycle in New York City, and all of that magically changes one winter morning when he wakes up in suburban New Jersey next to Kate, played by Téa Leoni, the girlfriend he left 13 years ago. He's now got 2 kids, and he's traded in his Ferrari for a minivan, and he's trying not to lose his mind. So basically, it's a movie about a single-minded businessman who literally has to become the family man of this family's house. So it's a movie about a guy living another person's life, and I think this movie does a great job at it. And this movie's got a really good cast. You got Nicolas Cage, you got Téa Leoni, you got Don Cheadle, you got Saul Rubinek, and Jeremy Piven. So this movie's got a really good cast overall. And just, yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. And this is a movie that, I will be throwing this on around the Christmas season from here on out. Coming in at number 18 is going to be the 2003 Will Ferrell movie Elf. Now, when it comes to this movie Elf, I know this movie is not for everyone. It is certainly, now I absolutely love this movie, and the thing is with Elf is that, most people I talk to love this movie, and it is considered a Christmas classic, but I am friends with some people who don't like this movie, which, I mean, hey, that's fine, to each your own, because as the saying goes, film is subjective at the end of the day, which is true, but for me personally, Elf does work, where basically you have this premise where you basically have this elf, you have this guy named Buddy, played by Will Ferrell, who was a human raised by elves his entire life, but he has zero idea that he's a human and that he's not a normal elf, but eventually he finds out the truth and he wants to go visit his dad Walter in New York City. And I think it's a very heartwarming movie. I think that Will Ferrell is absolutely hilarious. I really like Ed Asner's take on Santa. I thought that he was really good. And just, yeah, again, this is not a movie for everyone. Again, it is an acquired taste. You know, Will Ferrell's type of humor, it isn't for everyone. But for me, I like most of his stuff. And for me, this movie works. So, yeah. Coming in at number 17 is going to be a movie that I wanted to review, but I didn't get the time to. And that is Jingle All the Way from 1996, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. I love this movie. This is a very funny Christmas comedy movie where basically Arnold Schwarzenegger basically plays this dad who his son wants the Turbo Man toy for Christmas, but he accidentally made the mistake by, forgetting to get the toy while it was in stock. And basically the toy's all out in stock, and this movie's just an absolute comedy riot where he basically has to get the toy for his son that he forgot to get. And I love this movie. I think that Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad are really funny in this movie. And just, yeah, really good family comedy. And, definitely something different from Arnold Schwarzenegger because, in the 1980s, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was mainly known for action movies, but of course, in 1988, he had the movie Twins with him and Danny DeVito, which is really good. And then, of course, in 1990, he had the comedy movie Kindergarten Cop, which I do think is the best of his comedy movies and a good family comedy. And then, after that, he had the movie Junior, which I've never seen, but I don't know. Look, I like Arnold Schwarzenegger, but I don't know. Just the whole idea of Junior, just that whole premise kind of turns me off. But Jingle All the Way is a good movie. Again, it's not as good as Kindergarten Cop, but it is a good family Christmas movie, and it comes in at number 17. Coming in at number 16, I know all of you guys are going to roll your eyes at me like, oh, it's not a Christmas movie. Because, if you strip away Christmas, this movie's unrecognizable. Well, the movie takes place on Christmas, so, whether you like it or not, the movie's on the list, so just deal with it. It's my list, okay? I can put whatever I want on whatever list, but coming in at number 16 is going to be Invasion USA with Chuck Norris. Yes, for those who don't know, this movie actually does take place on Christmas, but I think it's a very good action movie, and me personally, I do really like Chuck Norris as an actor. I think he was a very good martial artist and actor, but, I really enjoyed the action scenes in this movie. It's Charles Bronson not Charles Bronson. Well, we'll get to him soon, but this is Chuck Norris at his best, in my opinion. I think that the action scenes are really well directed by Joseph Zito, and while, yes, this movie doesn't really have the themes of Christmas, but it does take place on Christmas, so I felt like throwing it on here. But yeah, Invasion USA is a fun movie. I would like to review that in January if I get the chance, but yeah. Now, coming in at number 15 is going to be Death Wish 3 from 1985, starring Charles Bronson. Now, for those who don't know, the 2018 movie Death Wish with Bruce Willis is a remake of an old movie from the 1970s. However, the original Death Wish movie from the 1970s was so popular that it had 4 sequels, and my favorite Death Wish movie is Death Wish 3 from 1985, starring Charles Bronson, and it's the only movie in the Death Wish series that takes place on Christmas. And what makes this such a good action movie is where you have this main character named Paul Kersey, who is played by, of course, Charles Bronson, where basically his partner is murdered, and he has to get revenge on these bad guys, a part of street gangs in New York. And I think this is a really good action movie. I think that this movie is Charles Bronson at his best. And the way he defeats the bad guy at the end of this movie is epic. So yeah, love Death Wish 3. Coming in at number 14 is going to be a movie that I watched for the first time this year. And that is the original Miracle on 34th Street, released in 1947. Now, What's interesting about this movie, now, I know they did do a remake of this movie in the 90s. I'm 90% sure I saw the remake. Now, like I said, I am 90% sure that I've seen the remake of this, but it's been so long I can't remember. But anyways, let's talk about the original movie. So, Miracle on 34th Street. Now, when this movie did come out in 1947, it was a black and white movie. However, the unique thing about the original movie that I own on DVD here, there is actually 2 discs, okay? Now, for instance, this disc right here is the original black and white version from the 1940s, but disc number 2 is the full color version. Now, but in order to pay respect to the movie, I filmed my review in black and white since the original cut of the movie was in black and white, and because that's the version of it I watched. But anyways, setting that aside, just viewing it as a movie on its own, setting that aside, I do really like this movie. Essentially, the premise to this movie is where you basically have this mother who is not a believer in Santa Claus, and she does not want her daughter believing in Santa Claus. However, she just so happens to come across a man by the name of Kris Kringle who claims he is Santa Claus. However, there's an incident in the movie where there's this guy who's an absolute jerk that frames Santa Claus for something that he did not do, and it goes to court, and Santa, of course, is able to win the case and stuff like that. And of course, Santa Claus wins. And throughout the course of the movie, the mother herself, who does not believe in Santa Claus and does not want her daughter to believe it's Santa Claus, she even starts to question if the man in question might be Santa Claus, which I do like that aspect about the movie. And I think this movie has a very good message where basically, if you do not get what you want at first, have faith and keep believing. Like, I think that's a really good, heartwarming message. And I think that Edmund Gwynn, I think that's the name of the actor who played the Santa, did a really good job. In fact, in fact, you know what? I'm even going to go as far to say it. Edmund Gwynn, he might honestly be the best on-screen actor to have played Santa. I thought he was really good. But yeah, great classic movie. Coming in at number 13, and I know, some people are going to be upset that this is not number 1 or it's not number 2, but again, these are all great movies, so just because your favorite movie's not placed higher doesn't mean that I don't like it. Again, these are my top 20 favorite Christmas movies. Like, I love all of these movies, so do not get mad about the placement. But coming in at number 13 for me is going to be the 1946 movie It's a Wonderful Life, starring James Stewart and Donna Reed. Now, again, like I said, I am a big fan of the movie The Family Man with Nicolas Cage, and It's a Wonderful Life, it is a very similar movie in a lot of ways, but again, this movie did it first, and it did that concept the best, in my opinion, and just, yeah, this is an absolute classic. I mean, of course, there's the whole iconic scene where the little daughter says, "Look, Mommy, every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings." I mean, come on, like, that quote right there is iconic. I mean, this movie's so iconic that, even people who have not seen this movie know where that quote comes from. That's how iconic of a movie this is. I mean, heck, when I was a kid growing up, long before I saw this movie, I saw that clip referenced in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, which is another Christmas classic that we'll get to higher on the list, and it was also referenced in Home Alone 2, but just, yes, love this movie. Coming in at number 12 is going to be a movie I watched for the first time a little over a year ago, and that is the 1994 comedy movie, The Ref, starring Denis Leary. Now, this is a movie that I bet most people haven't even heard about it, but the reason that I decided to check it out was because a YouTuber I really like, Cody Leach, is a massive fan of this movie, and he did a video on his top 50 favorite comedies, and that movie was on there, and I'm like, what's The Ref? And then he explained the premise to it, and I'm like, ooh, that... And I was like, ooh, you know, that seems like a comedy I would like. And, well, I ended up really liking the movie. And it's a very underrated comedy that I don't feel like it gets the attention it deserves. But basically, the premise of the movie is where you basically have this husband and wife who are in the middle of this husband and wife who are arguing. They don't get along with each other. And then, so basically, the premise of this movie is where you have this husband and wife who argue. They don't get along with each other. But you have a robber played by Denis Leary who breaks into the house. And this movie is just an absolute comedy riot where, you know, heck, you know, yes, the husband and wife are a bunch of jerks, but they're absolutely funny. Like, you know, for instance, I absolutely love the entire scene early on in the movie where the husband and the wife are arguing at each other, and then the counselor is trying to talk to them, and then they both yell at him to shut up. Like, just that scene right there is absolutely hilarious. And just, yeah, very underrated Christmas movie that, you know, it is due for a rewatch. It's been probably close to 2 years at this point since I've watched it, but yeah, I really did enjoy it. Coming in at number 11 is going to be Lethal Weapon from 1987. Yes, this is a Christmas movie. It is an action movie that takes place on Christmas, where you have these two police detectives, Martin Riggs, you know, played by Mel Gibson, in, you know, my personal favorite role that Mel Gibson's done, and then you have his partner played by Danny Glover. It's basically a buddy cop action movie, and I think it's a really good one. I think that the humor, it works pretty well. I think that Danny Glover and Mel Gibson have really good chemistry with each other. And just, yeah, this game's an absolute classic. Now, it's not my favorite Lethal Weapon movie. That's Lethal Weapon 2, but the reason that that's not on the list is because the second movie does not take place on Christmas like this first movie does. But yes, love Lethal Weapon. Coming in at number 10 is going to be Scrooged from 1988, starring Bill Murray. Now, of course, everyone knows about the classic Christmas story, A Christmas Carol, and it's been adapted several times. I mean, The Muppet Christmas Carol is great. However, my favorite version of the story is, of course, Scrooged from 1988, starring Bill Murray. I absolutely love this movie. Now, this movie is a Christmas comedy classic. It was actually directed by Richard Donner, the same guy who directed The Goonies, the first Superman movie with Christopher Reeve, and the Lethal Weapon movies. And Scrooged is a comedy classic where, throughout the course of the movie, Bill Murray's a jerk, but throughout the course of the movie, the ghost of Christmas Past is trying to show him why being a jerk is bad. And throughout the course of the movie, Ebenezer Scrooge, played by Bill Murray, is trying to better himself as a person. And this movie, and I will say, this movie's got some... Now, this movie is PG-13, but I'm gonna say this, like, there is some really good dark humor in this movie. I mean, yeah, but if you guys have never seen Scrooge, check this movie out. It's a Christmas comedy classic. Yeah. Now, coming in at number 9 for me is going to be Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. Now, yes, this movie is nowhere near... Now, yes, this movie's not as good as the first movie, but then again, most sequels aren't. But I think that this is a great sequel, you know. I really like the main character, Kevin McAllister, played by Macaulay Culkin. Of course, you have the Wet Bandits with Harry and Marv, played by Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern. They're iconic, you know. I especially like the idea. I like the idea for the sequel where Kevin, instead of staying home alone, he accidentally takes the wrong plane away from his family, and he has to stay at a hotel and get away from the wet bandits. I think that that's a rather interesting concept. Of course, there's the whole iconic scene where Bill Murray, where Kevin is able to use the TV and trick Bill Murray, Rob Schneider, and the rest of the hotel staff, you know, thinking that there's an active shooter, but he's able to trick them by using a VHS tape. Like, that scene's hilarious. It just, yeah, great sequel. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Rocky IV. Now, again, I know people are like, well, why are you putting this on here? Well, Rocky IV does take place on Christmas, so I felt like including it. But yeah, Rocky IV, now look, the Rocky movies are great. You know, Rocky is one of the greatest movie franchises of all time, but my favorite of the series has always been Rocky IV, and of course the original Rocky is a close second. But what I love about this movie is the story, where you basically have, of course, Rocky, played by Sylvester Stallone, who has to fight the bad guy of the movie, the bad guy wrestler, Ivan Drago, played by Dolph Lundgren. And I think this movie is really good. I think that, you know, Dolph Lundgren is a really good bad guy in this movie. Just, yeah, very enjoyable movie. In fact, it's been a hot minute since I watched the Rocky movies. It's been quite a few years, so I would like to start up a review series of that, possibly in 2026, but we'll see where things go. But yeah, love this movie. Speaking of Sylvester Stallone, coming in at number 7 is another Sylvester Stallone movie. Coming in at number 7 is the 1982 action movie First Blood, starring Sylvester Stallone, which is the first movie in the Rambo series. Now, Rambo is one of my favorite movie franchises of all time. And of course, you know, movies like First Blood, Rambo First Blood Part 2, Rambo 3, and Rambo 4 are great. Rambo 5 was decent for what it was, but no Rambo movie will ever top the original movie First Blood from 1982. And again, I know this movie does not have the themes of Christmas, but the reason I included it on the list is because this movie does take place on Christmas. I mean, even the director himself said that this movie takes place on Christmas. And there's even if there's not a whole lot of snow, there's a scene in the movie with a Christmas tree inside the sheriff's station. So I'm including it on the list. But yeah, I think that the action scenes are really good. I think that Sylvester Stallone gives a really good performance as the character Rambo. And just, yeah, I mean, come on, it's Rambo. I mean, what more do I really need to say about First Blood that hasn't already been said by people? It's a great movie. Coming in at number 6 for me is going to be A Christmas Story from 1983. I absolutely love this movie, where this movie's got a very simple story where you basically have an 8-year-old boy by the name of Ralphie who just wants to get a Red Ryder BB gun for Christmas. And this movie's an absolute comedy riot. I think that, you know, Peter Billingsley as Ralphie is funny. I think that Darren McGavin as Ralphie's dad is hilarious. Of course, there's the whole iconic scene with the leg lamp that's been iconic for decades. And just, yeah, this is a really good Christmas comedy, and just, I absolutely love this movie. And of course, this is the movie where the whole quote comes from, "You'll shoot your eye out, kid." You know, just great movie. Coming in at number 5 for me, this is a very adult type of movie. This is not a movie for kids at all, but I saw this movie when I was 16 years old, when my dad showed it to me in 2019. And coming in at number 5 for me is going to be Bad Santa, starring Billy Bob Thornton. I absolutely love this movie. For those who don't know what the movie is, essentially, the premise, it's basically this movie about this drunk guy that, you know, really doesn't like being around much people, but he's played by Billy Bob Thornton, and he basically has to pretend to be Santa and, you know, basically be a mall Santa. And it's a really interesting idea for a comedy. You know, I think that Billy Bob Thornton's funny in the movie. I mean, of course, you know, the whole entire scene where the guy says where Bad Santa, or Billy Bob Thornton's character, where his boss manager is talking to him, he questions performance, and the guy's like, performance like, and then I like the part when Billy Bob Thornton interrupts him and he says, performance like sexual, and then Tony Cox and then Billy Bob Thornton just stare at their manager, and then he says, my F stick, and then of course there's the whole scene where Tony Cox just shoves him off to the side. He's like, go sit down. You know how your blood sugar is. And the guy's like, he's not going to say that in front of the children, in front of them, is he? He's like, no, just a joke. Like, I'm just laughing thinking about this scene right now. But just, yeah, Bad Santa, love this movie. Again, it's not a kid's movie, but it's a movie I like watching when the kids aren't around. It's a good movie. Coming in at number 4 is a movie that, unfortunately, I don't own this movie on DVD yet, and I've only seen it once, but I rented it on Prime Video earlier this year, and I really dug it, so I'd like to get the DVD someday. And coming in at number 4 for me is going to be the 1996 action movie, The Long Kiss Goodnight. Now, for those who don't know what this movie is, essentially the premise is this, where the premise of this movie, for those who don't know, you basically have this elementary school teacher, played by Gina Davis, who is having these very strange PTSD flashbacks of violence that she cannot explain whatsoever. Basically figuring out she had skills that she didn't even know she had. And then in the movie, she basically hires a private investigator played by Samuel L. Jackson. And of course, there is a big twist reveal in the movie that she basically had amnesia, which is why she's forgetting stuff, and she basically worked for a secret agent at the government. However, a group of bad guys are targeting her kids and, threatening their safety, so she has to team up with Samuel L. Jackson to protect her kids. And I think it's a really good action movie set on Christmas. I think that Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson have really good chemistry. This is a great movie. Now, I don't want to say too much, in case I decide to review it someday on the channel, but if you guys have never seen this movie, and you like action movies, check this movie out if you haven't seen it, because this movie is an absolute classic. Coming in at number 3, no list would ever be complete without this. Coming in at number 3 for me is going to be the 1990 comedy movie Home Alone, starring Macaulay Culkin. Now, I know for most people this is the best holiday movie of all time, but again, there was just 2 movies that slightly did it better in my opinion, but it's a very razor-thin difference. But it's Home Alone. Home Alone's a classic. What more do I really have to say about this movie that hasn't already been said? Once again, Macaulay Culkin, played by Kevin McAllister, is a Macaulay Culkin, played by Kevin McAllister, played by Macaulay Culkin, is a great child actor. This movie has some fantastic comedy in it. And this movie just has such a creative concept where you basically have this mother who accidentally leaves a kid home alone, and he basically has to set up these traps for some robbers. Very creative idea for a slapstick comedy movie. A lot of physical comedy in here. Once again, Kevin McAllister, played by Macaulay Culkin, is a great character. The Wet Bandits, Harry and Marv, played by Daniel Stern and Joe Pesci, are great. And great comedy classic. And of course, other iconic scenes where Frank is like, where Uncle Frank's like, look what you did, you little jerk. But great movie. Coming in at number 2 for me is going to be National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Now, as a kid, I liked Home Alone more. Now, Home Alone is still a fantastic movie, but in more recent years, I would say I prefer National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, but it's only a slight difference. But I absolutely love this movie. Clark, of course, the main character, Clark Griswold, played by Chevy Chase, is absolutely hilarious. And I will say, for a movie that was rated PG-13 as a PG-13 family comedy, this movie is not afraid to get... This movie, despite being PG-13 and a family comedy, it's not afraid to get dark at times. It's not afraid to get dirty in some spots, but I think it's a really funny movie, Of course, Clark Griswold, played by Chevy Chase, is funny. Of course, you know, the whole beginning where Clark Griswold's son says to him, "Dad, did you bring the saw?" And then, of course, there's the whole scene where Clark Griswold's an idiot and he realizes he forgot the saw at home, so they have to literally dig the Christmas tree out of the ground. I think that scene's funny and just, yeah, great comedy. But for me, coming in at number 1 has got to be the 1988 Christmas action movie Die Hard, starring Bruce Willis. Now, yes, there's the whole debate of it not be... some people think it's not a Christmas movie. Look, if you don't think that, fine, to each their own. But me personally, I personally think that argument is dumb for reasons I'm not going to get into. So just enjoy the list for what it is. But yes, Die Hard's an absolute classic. Of course, the main character, John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, is, of course, the main character, John McClane, played by Bruce Willis, is a great character. I think that the action scenes are really good, some of the best action in film. I think that the direction by John McTiernan is really good. And of course, Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, is the perfect action movie villain of all time. And, you know, and of course, the whole scene where Hans Gruber falls off the Nakatomi Plaza is an iconic scene. I mean, it's Die Hard. I mean, what more do I really need to say about this movie that hasn't been said? I already did a whole 35-minute review on why it's one of my favorite movies and my favorite Christmas movies. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, that was my long video of my top 20 favorite Christmas movies. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. And Merry Christmas to everyone out there, and have a Happy New Year. Bye now.